The story begins with James, a 17-year-old boy who believes he is a psychopath because he feels no emotions. He says he never enjoyed jokes or laughter, even as a child. He was often annoyed by his father Phil's dad jokes and frequently imagined punching him in the face. When James was 9, he deliberately put his hand in a deep fryer, hoping to experience something new. By the age of 15, he took his disturbing curiosity further by taking his neighbor's cat into the woods and killing it. Gradually, he began killing more animals in an attempt to feel something, but it was all in vain. Now at 17, James wants to move beyond animals and target a human, believing that might awaken some emotions within him. Unfortunately, at school, he encounters Alyssa, a girl who seems just as twisted as him, and she approaches him to start a conversation. Alyssa shares her story, explaining that she has always wanted to live far away from the world, a desire shaped by her family issues. Her mother has remarried, and her stepfather's behavior makes her deeply uncomfortable. She is often stuck taking care of her 2 young half-siblings, which only adds to her frustration. Despite not seeing her real father since she was 8, she treasures him for always remembering her birthday and sending her cards. At school, Alyssa struggles to connect with others and dislikes people who seem to get along with everyone. During lunch, a girl sitting across from her texts her instead of talking directly. Annoyed, Alyssa confronts her, but the girl's casual response irritates her even more. In a fit of anger, she smashes her phone and storms off. As she walks away, she notices James sitting alone and decides to approach him. Sensing he might be someone who understands her, she starts a conversation by criticizing his skating skills, which catches James's attention. Internally, James thinks Alyssa could be the perfect target. After school, Alyssa finds James sitting alone and assumes he has been waiting for her. He plays along, pretending to be interested in her, and she impulsively kisses him. While walking together, Alyssa mentions breaking her phone and points out that they can't text each other. James, completely unfazed, says he doesn't have a phone either, and in a flat tone, asks if she would go on a date with him. Alyssa agrees. They go to a local restaurant. When the waitress comes to take their order, Alyssa rudely demands a spoon. The waitress, offended, tells her that such language isn't allowed. Alyssa apologizes, but then sarcastically says she wants a big banana shit. This enrages the waitress, who calls security, prompting Alyssa to storm out, swearing. James realizes Alyssa has her own mental issues. Later, Alyssa asks if she can come to James's house. He is surprised, but sees this as a perfect opportunity to execute his plan. When they arrive, Alyssa finds the house strange, commenting on the large number of windows. She notices a picture and asks about it. James explains that it's his mother, who is currently in Japan. Alyssa then touches James inappropriately, which makes him realize that she is constantly preoccupied with thoughts of doing it. Meanwhile, Alyssa goes to the kitchen and makes herself a piece of toast, completely burnt, while James stands behind her, deep in thought about how he might kill her. At that moment, Phil arrives home and is surprised to see Alyssa with James. He jokingly remarks that he thought James might be gay, but is relieved to see he's straight. Alyssa, however, retorts that she doesn't think James is straight either. She believes he might be asexual. Later, on the rooftop of the house, Alyssa bluntly asks James if he has ever slept with a girl before. Internally, James decides that confidence is crucial in this situation, so he lies and says he has slept with many girls. Alyssa then casually tells him that she will come back the next day at 11, expecting him to sleep with her. The next day at 11 a.m., James waits at home, fully prepared. He hides a knife, planning to kill Alyssa as soon as she arrives. However, even as the clock passes 11, Alyssa doesn't show up. Meanwhile, Alyssa is about to leave her house when her mother, Gwen, stops her, asking for help with a family function. Alyssa tries to explain that she needs to go somewhere important, but after Gwen insists, she reluctantly agrees. During the function, Alyssa serves sweets to the guests, leaving her exhausted. Midway through the event, Tony, her stepfather, offers her a drink. Alyssa coldly tells him not to expect anything from her, but Tony inappropriately touches her. Gwen notices this but says nothing. Alyssa realizes something is seriously wrong. Tony is crossing boundaries, and her mother's silence is just as disturbing. Furious and disillusioned, Alyssa decides to leave her home for good. She puts on her real father Leslie's jacket and runs away, heading straight to James's house. At James's place, Alyssa storms in and, still fuming, takes off her shirt and sits on the couch. James, observing her, quietly tries to retrieve the knife he had hidden. Alyssa abruptly asks if he wants to leave the town and go somewhere far away with her. James, realizing he needs to be patient if he wants to kill her, agrees to her plan and says he's ready to go. Alyssa tells him to get his father's car, and James discreetly slips the knife into his pocket. Together, they head outside. As James takes the car, Phil arrives home and is startled to see them. Without hesitation, James punches Phil in the face, knocking knocking him down and steals the car. As they drive away, Alyssa asks James if he is scared. He responds with slight hesitation, admitting that he might be just a little. Alyssa, on the other hand, confidently states that she isn't scared at all. This makes James reflect, thinking that she really should be scared. Then they both head to a gaming arena. Alyssa plays enthusiastically, fully immersed in the games, but James remains emotionless, as usual, showing no reaction. At one point, Alyssa suggests to James that he should put his tongue in her ear. James, without much thought, does as she asks. This leads to the arena manager noticing them and, disturbed by their behavior, kicks them out. Then they both go to a fancy restaurant to eat. After finishing their meal, Alyssa asks James if he brought money with him. James admits that he forgot to bring any. Alyssa tells him that the money she had brought with her was spent at the gaming arena. The two of them quietly leave the restaurant without paying, and luckily, the restaurant staff doesn't notice. Later, as they continue their journey, Alyssa starts to get mischievous and begins to undress James. This distraction causes the car to lose control and crash into a tree. As they both exit the car, it catches on fire. James is slightly worried because the car was his father's lifelong investment. They begin walking on foot, with James shirtless trying to hitch a ride. However, no cars stop for them. Eventually, a van pulls over. The driver, an older man, offers them a ride, saying he's heading south and that they can join him if they want. James is ready, but Alyssa becomes suspicious of the man. The man tells Alyssa that there's a sweater on the back seat, asking her to fetch it for James. He then jokes, asking what they were doing in the woods. James responds, saying there was nothing inappropriate between them. The man laughs and reassures them that he doesn't care what they do, claiming he's not a cop. He mentions that he spent 5 years in the army and is heading south to buy a battle dog. He offers to call James's mother and tell her their location, but James replies that his mother is dead. Alyssa is shocked upon hearing this. They stop at a restaurant, and Alyssa asks James why he lied about his mother being in Germany. James says it's a long story. Alyssa then says she doesn't trust the man. Just then, the man returns with coffee and shows them pictures of his wife and children. Alyssa mocks the appearance of the man's children, calling them potato faces and making fun of their looks, which is quite rude. James tries to stop her, but Alyssa, angry, storms out of the restaurant. James apologizes to the man and tells him that he needs to use the washroom. The man agrees, saying he also needs to go. Outside, Alyssa realizes she might have said too much and decides to go back to apologize. However, when she returns, she finds that both James and the man have disappeared. In the bathroom, the man begins inappropriately touching James while he's urinating. James doesn't resist. Suddenly, Alyssa enters and is shocked. She asks James if he's gay. James replies that he's not at all gay and that the man forced himself on him. The man tries to leave, but Alyssa stops him and demands his wallet, threatening to report him to the police and his family for inappropriately touching children. The man surrenders and hands over his wallet, which contains a large sum of cash. Then they both go to a nearby hotel to spend the night. Alyssa goes to the bathroom, and James starts preparing to kill her, taking a knife out of his boot. Just then, Alyssa's crying can be heard from the bathroom. James suppresses the thought of killing her. After Alyssa comes out, she calls home from the hotel phone, but her stepfather, Tony, picks up. Alyssa asks to speak to her mother, but Tony dismisses her request, saying her mother doesn't care about her. Gwen, as usual, stays silent and doesn't respond. Alyssa returns to the room and asks James to hug her tightly. James complies. In this moment, it seems that James might be starting to feel some emotions. Meanwhile, James's father, Phil, calls the police to initiate an investigation. The following day, they leave the hotel. Without a car, they are forced to walk. Alyssa tells James she wants to go to her real father, Leslie. James agrees, but since the house is far, they'll need to catch a train. Alyssa suggests that they rest for a day or two before taking the train. When James asks where they should stop, Alyssa's only answer is to keep walking. Along the way, Alyssa notices a large abandoned house. The state of the house makes it clear that no one has lived there for a long time. She breaks the glass at the front gate and sneaks inside. James expresses concern, worried it might cause trouble later, but Alyssa dismisses it, telling him not to worry. Inside, they come across a picture of the house's owner, and Alyssa sticks her chewing gum on it. The two sit by the pool and eat. In an effort to lighten the mood, Alyssa plays some music and starts dancing. Initially, James hesitates, but after some coaxing from Alyssa, he joins in. When Alyssa tries to get intimate with him, James points to the picture of the house owner, saying that he's watching them, and they shouldn't do this. Alyssa, frustrated, calls him boring and walks out. Outside, she meets a black man who introduces himself as Topher. Alyssa remarks on how odd his name is. He explains that his real name is Christopher, but he prefers to be called Topher because he considers himself weird. Alyssa finds this appealing and impulsively kisses him, then invites him to join her. Meanwhile, James experiences emotions he has never felt before, a deep sense of discomfort growing inside him. He waits for Alyssa, holding flowers, but she soon returns with another man. Alyssa tells James that she's going upstairs to do with Topher. For the first time in his life, James feels his heart break. He experiences a surge of emotions that he's been waiting for all his life. Despite the pain, he finds a twisted sense of gratitude toward Alyssa, believing that it was because of her that these emotions finally awoke in him. Downstairs, James starts rummaging through different drawers, checking things around the house. Suddenly, he comes across a camera and some photos, all belonging to the owner of the house. What he sees shocks him. Pictures of the man committing brutal acts of rape and murder against several women. Meanwhile, upstairs, Alyssa is about to get intimate with Topher when she suddenly thinks of James. She stops and tells Topher to leave. Furious, Topher calls her a slut and storms out. After Topher leaves, James goes upstairs to see Alyssa, but she refuses to let him in. James waits outside, planning to kill her while she sleeps. However, when she finally falls asleep and James sneaks in to carry out his plan, seeing her peacefully asleep softens his heart. He hesitates and decides not to go through with it. Instead, he lies beside her, gently touching her hand. It seems as though James is starting to develop real feelings for her. At that moment, the house's owner, Professor Clive, finally returns home. Seeing the state of his house, he immediately realizes that someone has broken in. He grabs a sharp iron rod and quietly heads upstairs. James hears him coming and quickly hides under the bed. When Clive turns on the light, he sees a young girl sleeping on his bed. His lust overcomes him, and he locks the door before beginning to harass Alyssa, even attempting to force her. Watching this unfold, James can no longer stay hidden. He springs from under the bed and stabs Clive in the neck with a knife, killing him instantly. Alyssa, too, is drenched in his blood. Alyssa tells James that they're in serious trouble now, blaming themselves for breaking into Clive's house. James defends his actions, saying that Clive was going to harm her, so he had no choice but to kill him. Alyssa, still anxious, responds that the police won't believe that. She says they need to dispose of the body. They both try to lift Clive's body but fail. James mentions he had read that a body becomes heavier after death. Alyssa suggests they focus on cleaning up their tracks. Together, they go through the house, wiping away their fingerprints and any evidence that could link them to the crime. James, sitting by Clive's body, reflects on how he doesn't feel the way he thought he would after killing someone. Alyssa, still shaken, asks why he even had to kill Clive. James insists that Clive was a serial killer and that he saved her life. He then shows Alyssa the photos and videos of Clive's crimes as proof. Alyssa tells him to leave those with the body and suggests they get out of there. Alyssa changes her clothes, burns the old ones, and tells James they need to go to her father, Leslie, immediately. James points out that her jacket has bloodstains on it, suggesting she burn it as well. Alyssa refuses, saying it's her father's jacket and she'll never destroy it. They eventually make their way to the railway station. Alyssa is nervous, fearing they'll be caught, so she decides they should change their appearance. She dyes her hair blonde and gives James a new haircut. They buy new clothes and wait for the train. While waiting, Alyssa asks James where he got the knife. He ignores her question. Meanwhile, Clive's mother returns home, screams upon finding his body, and calls the police. Two investigators, Eunice and Terry, arrive at the scene and begin their investigation. During their search, they find Topher's wallet under the bed. They bring Topher in for questioning. Emotional, Topher insists he didn't have love with anyone. Terry tells him they don't care whether he had love or not, they just want the girl's name. Topher reveals that her name is Alyssa and describes the brown leather jacket she was wearing. He also mentions that she was with a boy named James. The police now have significant evidence to follow up on. While they wait for the train, Alyssa begins to feel hungry, so they head to a nearby restaurant. She can't stop glancing at James, haunted by the image of him stabbing Clive in the neck. James, sensing her discomfort, explains that the knife was a birthday gift from his father for hunting. Alyssa, still unsettled, questions why anyone would carry a knife around. When James reaches out to hold her hand, she pulls away, saying she doesn't want him to touch her. Alyssa excuses herself under the pretense of going to the bathroom, but instead escapes through a window. She decides to leave him behind and disappears. James waits for her for a long time before realizing that Alyssa is not coming back. For the first time, emotions begin to stir within him. He understands his father more clearly now, the way he used bad jokes to cope with the pain of losing his wife. Desperate, James approaches some street thugs and asks them to beat him up. When they refuse, he offers them money to do it. After the beating, James finally understands something about himself. He isn't the psychopath he thought he was. He has emotions too. In a moment of clarity, he calls the police, telling them he has information about a murder. The scene shifts to 11 years earlier. James, as a young boy, tells his mother that he wants to go see the ducks that day. His mother, though visibly struggling with depression, doesn't seem to be in conflict with Phil. There is no argument, just an underlying heaviness. James and his mother head to a nearby pond to watch the ducks. Before they step out of the car, she hugs him tightly, telling him she loves him very much. James is unaware that his mother has come there to take her own life. As he gets out to feed the ducks, she accelerates the car, deliberately driving it into the pond. pond. She drowns as James watches, helpless, witnessing her mother committing the unthinkable. Back in the present, James sits in the police station, grappling with his thoughts. He begins to reconsider whether confessing to the murder is a good idea. When the police officer starts questioning him, James changes the subject, claiming that his mother's death 11 years ago was actually a murder, not a self-harm act. The officer, confused, clarifies that what happened to his mother was indeed a self-harm act, not a murder. James acts as though he doesn't fully understand, playing the role of someone mentally disturbed. The officer, sensing something off, lets him go, dismissing him as emotionally unstable. Meanwhile, Detective Terry and Eunice visit Phil for further investigation. They gather information about James, learning more about his background. Later, they visit Alyssa's stepfather's house to inquire about her involvement in the murder. Shocked by the news, Tony distances himself from the situation, claiming no connection to Alyssa since she is not his biological daughter. When Terry asks Gwen for a recent photo of Alyssa, Gwen is unable to provide one. Eunice, observing Gwen's fragile mental state, quickly realizes that Gwen might need professional help. Meanwhile, Alyssa experiences the start of her menstruation and heads to a store to buy undergarments. However, she quickly realizes that she's out of money. Desperation drives her to discreetly steal the undergarments, but the store guard catches her in the act. As he prepares to search her and call the police, a sudden distraction occurs. A parent outside loses sight of his child. The guard tells Alyssa to wait while he goes to help the parent. Seizing the opportunity, Alyssa makes her escape from the store. Once outside, she spots the missing child playing nearby. Alyssa takes a deep breath and decides to help, leading the child back to their worried parent. For a brief moment, she feels a sense of doing something right. On the other side, James returns to the restaurant where Alyssa had left him, hoping she might come back. He sits there, waiting, holding on to the hope that she hasn't abandoned him completely. Back at the store, the guard, having dealt with the missing child situation, surprisingly offers Alyssa some biscuits, showing her kindness instead of punishment. He lets her go with a warning not to steal again, but as Alyssa leaves, guilt momentarily fades, and she swipes the undergarments one more time. Yet outside, a wave of realization hits her. What she's doing is wrong. She throws the stolen items away, fully aware now that this behavior wasn't fair, not to herself and especially not to James, who had only tried to protect her. She regrets betraying him by running off. Determined to make things right, Alyssa heads back to the restaurant and finds James still waiting for her. Overcome with guilt, she apologizes to him, while James also seeks forgiveness for the killing of the man. In that moment, their bond rekindles, stronger than before. Meanwhile, the investigation team at Clive's house uncovers James's knife, a critical piece of evidence. Meanwhile, James and Alyssa steal a car and head toward Leslie's place. The car only has one cassette, which they initially enjoy listening to. However, after a while, Alyssa loses interest in it and throws it away. She believes that they did the right thing by killing the man, and even thinks that the police should reward them with a medal. After some time, the car runs out of gas. They manage to reach a gas station, and James tells Alyssa to fill the tank while he keeps the car running, so no one notices. Just then, the owner of the gas station arrives and recognizes that the car is running without keys. She realizes it's stolen, and tells them that if they want to fuel the car, they need to turn it off. James reluctantly agrees. The owner fills up the tank, trying to buy them some time, while secretly signaling to her son to call the police. However, her son doesn't catch on to the signal and doesn't understand what she means. Once the tank is full, the owner takes Alyssa inside the store to pay. Alyssa, who has no money, pretends to need to go to the bathroom. The owner catches on to her excuse and tells her son to call the police. At that moment, James walks into the store, pretending to hold a gun by tucking his hand into his jacket, and demands the owner let Alyssa go. He pushes the owner into a room and locks her inside. The owner's son doesn't try to help his mother. Instead, he seems content with the situation because he's tired of working. He tells James and Alyssa that he also wants to leave, and begins taking items from the store. James starts the car, and he and Alyssa quickly drive away, leaving the boy standing there watching them go. Meanwhile, Terry and Eunice go to Professor Clive's house to investigate. Speaking with Clive's mother, Eunice asks if Clive had any personal issues, affairs, or conflicts. Clive's mother, while knowing everything about Clive's actions, denies any such thing, saying that he had no affair. In reality, Clive's mother is the one who has hidden all evidence of his crimes. She asks the investigators to leave, and as they are about to go, Eunice advises her to always stand by the truth. Meanwhile, Alyssa makes a phone call from a telephone booth to her mother, Gwen. Gwen asks her to come home, but Alyssa responds by telling her to tell Tony to Later, Clive's mother's conscience awakens and she brings the evidence of his crimes to Eunice. Eunice immediately takes the evidence to Terry. After reviewing it, Terry says that while Clive may be a killer, it doesn't change the fact that Alyssa and James are not the real murderers. Alyssa and James arrive at Leslie's house, but instead of Leslie, another woman opens the door. The woman informs them that Leslie has left. When Alyssa hears this, she starts to leave, but James asks the woman if she knows where Leslie's new house is. The woman confirms she does. At this point, the stolen car they are driving breaks down, forcing them to continue their journey on foot. As they walk, it gets dark, and they eventually come across a cabin in the middle of nowhere, which turns out to be Leslie's new home. Leslie is overjoyed to see Alyssa and immediately hugs her. He looks like an alcoholic and drug addict. Alyssa introduces James to Leslie as her boyfriend and asks if they could stay with him for a few days. Leslie hesitates for a moment but then agrees, saying they are welcome to stay as long as they want. The next morning, Leslie invites James to play a target shooting game with knives. Leslie misses the target, but James hits the bullseye on his first try. Leslie is quite impressed by James's skill. Leslie then asks James if Alyssa talks about him often. James responds that she does, and hearing this makes Leslie really happy. He hugs James in excitement. Meanwhile, the investigators bring James and Alyssa's parents together for a joint interrogation. Alyssa's parents try to blame everything on Phil. Phil defends James, explaining that as a child, he witnessed his mother commit the self-harm act, which affected his brain, but he insists that James couldn't be capable of such serious crimes. Eunice feels a sense of pity for both of the children. Later, James and Alyssa witness Leslie being involved in drug dealing. James suggests that staying there idea, but Alyssa defends her father, saying they are perfectly safe. After completing the drug deal, Leslie defends his actions, claiming that he's just fighting against the government and wealthy people. To lighten the mood, Leslie takes James and Alyssa to a local bar. On the other side, the investigators manage to locate Leslie's old house. When they ask the woman living there about Leslie, she denies knowing anything about him. Terry, upon hearing this, leaves, but Eunice discreetly slips her number to the woman, telling her that she wants to protect both James and Alyssa from Terry. Meanwhile, at the bar, Alyssa and Leslie are dancing together. Alyssa thanks Leslie that he never forgot her birthday and always sent her cards. James watches them from the side and begins to feel that Alyssa is drifting away from him. As they continue drinking, the woman from Leslie's old house arrives and calls Leslie over to talk. It is revealed that Leslie has another child with this woman. The woman asks Leslie for new uniforms and books for the child, and accuses him of hiding out while the police are looking for him. Alyssa, upon seeing the child, is shocked and asks if Leslie is his father. The child responds affirmatively, leaving Alyssa in disbelief. Leslie tries to avoid the situation, but eventually, frustrated, storms out of the bar. In a panic, he starts his car and accidentally runs over a dog. Alyssa and James, though unwilling, are forced to euthanize the dog because it is suffering badly. Later in his cabin, Leslie begins taking drugs. While watching the news on TV, he learns that there is a reward for anyone who captures James and Alyssa. Seeing the offer, he is tempted by greed. Alyssa and James bury the dog together on the beach. As they become more intimate, Alyssa suddenly remembers the scene with Professor Clive and becomes frightened. She tells James that they can do this another time. Meanwhile, Eunice receives Leslie's girlfriend's tip-off about his location, and, without informing Terry, she heads directly to Leslie's cabin. Morning arrives and James and Alyssa wake up by the beach. Alyssa suggests that they should board Leslie's boat and sail to the farthest corner of the world to start a new life. James agrees, and the two head to Leslie's cabin to get the boat keys. Eunice observes the cabin from a distance. On the other side, Terry finds out that Eunice is conducting the investigation on her own. She sends Eunice a message, warning her that if she is doing this alone, it is a big mistake. James and Alyssa enter the cabin, where Leslie laughs about the dog's death, asking for forgiveness. When Alyssa requests the boat keys, Leslie refuses and admits that he knows they've killed someone and that there's a reward for them. He reassures them that he won't reveal anything and promises their safety. Alyssa, however, says she knows all about his promises. Leslie scolds Alyssa, but James steps in, telling him not to speak to her that way. The tension escalates, but Leslie tries to change the subject by offering to make tea. While pretending to do so, he secretly calls the police and hides his phone. He then claims they've run out of milk, offering biscuits instead, and sits down next to Alyssa. Leslie apologizes for not telling her about his other son, explaining that he was too ashamed. He tells her that he is her father and that she can tell him anything. Feeling emotionally overwhelmed, Alyssa confesses that they killed a man because he tried to assault her. James immediately senses something is wrong. He quickly grabs a gun and finds the hidden phone, informing Alyssa that Leslie called the police. When Alyssa hears about Leslie's betrayal for money, she grabs a knife and stabs him in the thigh. At that moment, Eunice enters. shocked by what she sees. James holding the gun and the knife in Leslie's thigh. Meanwhile, Terry discovers their location and heads there with the full police force. On the other hand, Eunice tries to explain to both of them that she is here to help them, not the police. She tells them that their parents are really worried about them. She wishes James a happy birthday and tells him that he has turned 18 today. Alyssa is surprised upon hearing this and tells James that he should have told her earlier, as she would have brought him a gift. In the middle of this conversation, Leslie interrupts, warning them to Eunice as she is trying to get them both locked up in jail. Alyssa responds, saying it's incredible that Leslie himself called the police, but is now saying this. Leslie explains that he did it to protect her from getting into trouble. Alyssa gets angry and kicks Leslie in the leg, making him wince in pain. She then tells him that if he couldn't raise his children properly, he shouldn't give birth to them. Alyssa asks Leslie if he had actually sent the birthday cards all those years, or if his mother Gwen had written them. Leslie admits that it was not him, but his mother Gwen, who had written the cards herself. Hearing this breaks Alyssa's heart, as the person she had considered a father figure turned out to be her enemy. Leslie tries to explain, but Alyssa tells him to shut up. Then Alyssa asks Eunice if they surrender now, whether they will be kept in a juvenile center, and if she and James will be together. Eunice responds that it's difficult for that to happen. Alyssa apologizes and then knocks Eunice unconscious by hitting her on the head. James grabs the boat keys, and the two of them run toward the boat. As soon as they reach the beach, James tells Alyssa that she should tell the police that he kidnapped her so she can be free and nothing will happen to her. However, Alyssa refuses and insists that they should run away together. James apologizes, but then in a moment of desperation, he hits Alyssa on the head and knocks her out before running toward the coast. The police arrive just in time to catch Alyssa. They then start firing at James as he runs. While escaping, James reflects on the fact that he has turned 18 today. It is only now that he begins to understand the true meaning of relationships and the emotions he had been searching for all these years. Finally, the realization he had been chasing for so long has come to him.